It's so easy to be average. It takes a little something to be special, doesn't it? It takes a little something special to be a great player. Did you push yourself to be great today?
There wasn't a first down. Not that much. The officiating, I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today. That spot, the graphic displays the NFL penalties. The one not called on us on that day clearly was being booked before the ball got there. And the previous penalty they called on Delano Hill, the ball is uncatchable and by the receiver. See, I'm bitterly disappointed. Happy to throw a hat, when you stick, when you're silent, that's a penalty.
This is the Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network, your authority on all things Ohio State. Here are your hosts, Shannon Sommers and Chip Minnick.
Not Chip, if you have an iota of human feeling.
Buckeye Nation, welcome to another edition of Silver Bullets Podcast, episode number 13, Thoughts from SpartanNation, on the Ozone Radio Network. I'm your host, Shannon Sommers, contributor at Hazen Cannon on theozone.net, and producer of Across the Field with Tony Gerdeman. Today, I'm going to be joined by Hondo Carpenter of SpartanNation.com. We're going to discuss the game coming up this weekend. We did our show in 2 different days because Chip was unfortunately able to make the discussion with Hondo, as he's very upset about, because Hondo's always a great discussion with us. So since the discussion with Hondo is pretty long, we're going to break this up into 2 days. So look for episode 14 tomorrow, which is going to have a little bit of our Iowa recap, and it will have our Pick'em segment. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go into our segment with Hondo. All right, Buckeye Nation, as we know, we have a big matchup this weekend. Michigan State Spartans coming into the shoe, facing Ohio State. Ohio State coming off a loss from Iowa. Michigan State coming off a nice win, delayed win in East Lansing over Penn State. We have Hondo Carpenter here. Hondo was SpartanNation, correct?
Yes, sir. SpartanNation.com. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. We've had Hondo on our show before, and unfortunately last year we had a great interview with him, and if we found out later that it was antivirus software that ruined the whole thing. And I swear that video would have went viral, Hondo.
Oh. Let me just tell you this. I went all around the nation before the season on national radio, national television, saying I thought this was Ohio State's year. I thought you guys were going to win the national title. And, man, I'm sitting here today stunned at what's happened in Columbus.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out making heads and tails of that Iowa game. I mean, was it something that they were overconfident and went in there, or was it just some of the same issues that I've talked on a couple of different shows about that have come back and bit Ohio State in the butt, and we might as well just go ahead and get into it. You know, Ohio State's back 7 right now looks suspect. And I think right now, I got the wrong thing here for Chip's questions, but one of his questions was, Ohio repeatedly burned Ohio State with play action passes to their tight ends, considering how Brian Lewerke has been passing the ball. Can you tell our listeners about some of his favorite targets, among them being tight end Matt Sokol?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me go back and say this, if you don't mind, because you asked me a minute ago about Iowa and what happened. Shannon, I would hope that you would tell your listeners, this is my 3rd or 4th year interviewing with you, and I would hope that you would tell them if I'm an Ohio State hater, because I'm not.
Oh, no, definitely not.
I think it is a Mount Rushmore of college football programs. I have immense respect. I think Urban Meyer is the 2nd best coach in college football. I think Kevin Wilson was not a good head coach, but I think he's an offensive genius. I predicted Ohio State to not only win the national title, I expected JT to win the Heisman. Having said that, I think there is a systemic problem at Ohio State. And the reason I asked you to back me up to your listeners, because you know me and have known me for years, because at Ohio State, if anyone says anything critical, oh, you're a hater, you're everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a hater. But here's what I am going to say. And I would invite anyone that calls me a hater to ask Jim Tressel if I'm a hater, because Jim's a dear friend.
Yep.
But one of the problems with Ohio State is there is a sense of entitlement there. And you saw it when Michigan State beat them and Ezekiel Elliott made comments he shouldn't have made after the game. You've seen it this week with fans selling off their tickets. I can't tell you how many Michigan State fans were stunned tickets are available. Michigan State fans are used to not being able to go to Columbus because tickets aren't available. And now you guys are selling them like a bunch of entitled Michigan fans. And I'm hearing and reading, because I know Big Ten schools, not Michigan State. I know Big Ten schools are sending some of your recruits copies of stuff people are saying on message boards about Urban. You're going to turn on Urban?
Yeah,
I understand it's not the majority. Okay, I want to make sure that's really clear. The absolute majority of Buckeye fans, of which my brother is one and holds several season tickets and is a large donor. I mean, you guys are rational, sane, good people. But you have a segment of your base calling out JT Barrett. Let me tell you this. Sitting in your mom's basement with a girlfriend named .jpeg and calling out JT Barrett doesn't make you a fan. It makes you a lunatic, and you sound stupid. The only thing the folks in Columbus should be doing to JT Barrett is saying, listen, you're a terrific young man who's won a lot of football games. We're disappointed with how this season went, but we respect you. We support you. I mean, the crap that Urban Meyer's taking, what you're basically saying is we're entitled, we're angry, we're mad, we're a bunch of snowflakes, and we can't deal with reality. Now, here's the deal. You should be disappointed. I think you've got a talented team good enough to win the national title, and I put my name on it. I don't have a problem with people being disappointed. But some of the crap I'm hearing, and now they're selling their tickets. Let me tell you something. Michigan State fans are in a frenzy because they're used to not being able to travel to Columbus and get tickets. And I heard of one Spartan fan today that bought 2, and the lady's condition was, are you a Spartan fan? She didn't want him to go to a Buckeye. So, quote, disgusted, unquote. So I'm going to say this. I think it's a systemic problem. I think, Mark D'Antonio goes to Columbus, gets kids like Chris Fry, kids like Joe Bocci, kids that Ohio State doesn't look at, and that doesn't mean that Ohio State's bad. They get the pick of the litter in Ohio, and everybody knows it. But they go and get these kids that have a chip and a blue-collar work ethic that says, listen, I'm going to pick up my lunch pail. I'm not entitled to anything. And what's amazing is Mark D'Antonio each and every week reminds these guys, you're not entitled to nothing. They don't respect you. They don't care about you. They think that you're already a win. So we're just going to approach each game with a workman-like mentality. And I think when you look in Columbus, when you guys get a recruit, everybody acts like he's the second coming of Jesus Christ, like there's no other quarterback in the world. There's no other tight end. There's no other wide receiver. There's no other this or that. And let me say, you get great players. I'm not in any way questioning the quality of person or player that you get. I've already said you got the second best head coach in college football. Your facilities are amazing. Your fan base is great. It's a Mount Rushmore school. But there's a sense of entitlement that breeds in there. You know, okay, well, our guys only stay 3 years. Well, that's not true. You got a lot of guys that stay there that aren't. And I think now that you're out of the playoff contention and you're not going, even if you win out, you're not going. I think you start to see when that's your only goal, nothing else matters. When Michigan State came into this season, they were hoping to get to a bowl game. They have a lot of young players that are overproducing. Michigan State's throwing the ball around. It's a lot like 2013 when they had a great defense, but a sophomore quarterback by the name of Connor Cook. I still go back to 2 years ago when they came in there without Connor Cook and beat Ohio State with Tyler O'Connor. I believe the better team won and the team with the superior talent lost in 2015 because Michigan State comes in with a blue-collar work ethic. They didn't try anything fancy. They just ran a lot of option and a lot of things that were not pretty because they cared about the win. That's all they cared about. And I'm saying Ohio State fans don't think that winning matters. I just think that comes with a sense of entitlement. And I respect the program. I love the program. Listen, I get crucified by Spartan fans that say I've got a love affair with Ohio State. I just have immense respect for it. I know how great that place is, but I'm going to tell you this. I think Michigan State coming in right now with the fan reaction, with player reaction. I mean, we saw with Ezekiel Elliott what that mentality is. I think Michigan State, I think they're going to have to play their best game of the year to win. So I don't think Michigan State goes in there and whoops anybody. But I don't think they could have picked a better scenario to be heading into Columbus. And at some point, fans in Columbus need to look and say, okay, listen, we are elite. We are elite. And you know what? You are. I'm not even questioning that. But we also got to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, are we part of this problem? Because I'm going to say something to you. There are 2 7-2 teams going to play this weekend. One of them is elated. They love their coach. They love their players. They're excited. Football is fun. And one is down in the dumps, mad, blaming everybody, that sense of entitlement. The only thing I'm not hearing is somebody in Columbus calling for a Russian investigation to what happened. Other than that, it reminds me a lot about Washington, D.C. And I respect, love, and admire your program. But I'm going to tell you something. I think some people need to look in the mirror and say, are we part of the problem?
Well, you have that. I mean, I can't disagree with what you're saying, but also at the same time, remember last year when we talked, the same situation was going on with D'Antonio as far as people putting him on the firing squad for having a 3-9 season.
And let me ask you a question. Did I not tell you they were insane?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I completely agree. They definitely, I mean, even the people that are calling for Harbaugh to get fired are insane.
I agree with you.
So, yep. I mean, you had that.
Let me say this to you, though. I want to make sure this is clear because I have so much respect for Ohio State fans in your program. I want to say it again just because some people, when they get mad, don't listen. I know this is a minority of your fans. Mm-hmm. I know this isn't the majority. But this is where the majority have to rise up and say, okay, you know what? Y'all need to stop. You need to just quit it. Because I'm going to tell you this. I think the same thing's going to happen in Michigan. I don't think this is going to happen in Ohio. But at Michigan, you know, who's left? I pissed off all the Michigan Wolverine fans when I said, you know, Rich Rodriguez was your 5th choice. Nobody wanted the job. Then you go and you got I don't remember who the next guy was. Rich Rodriguez
Brady
was
Hoke.
there, and then Brady Hoke, and he was your fourth or fifth choice. If they run Jim Harbaugh off, there ain't no one left. Now listen, I think they pulled back the curtain in Oz and realized the Wizard's wearing khaki pants. I don't think he's the second coming of Jesus Christ.
No.
I do think he's a good coach.
Yep.
A good coach. Not saying he's elite. I'm saying he's very good.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? In the last 30 days, Mark D'Antonio has beaten more top AP teams than he has in his career. And I'm just going to say that I think I will not be shocked if Jim Harbaugh leaves town, because he's like, I'm not going to put up with this. And I'm not saying there's any threat of that with Urban, because I know it's the minority. But I'm just saying to you, things are good in Columbus. And I find it fascinating. When I heard today about a recruit who other coaches were sending a message board posts and things people were saying about the program, other schools, not Michigan State, other schools were doing that. I'm thinking, wow, you're going after your own school. So anyways, I'm just saying to you, I find it fascinating.
Yeah, and that's the sense of entitlement, I totally agree. And the biggest problem is a lot of the fans, instead of putting the goals on the same page as, like, say, the players do, all right, the first thing we want to do is we want to have a winning record. We want to go and get into the Big Ten championship game. We want to win the Big Ten championship. We want to try to get into the playoffs and then try to win a national championship. For Ohio State fans, it's national championship or bust. So, I mean, even to me, if Ohio State recovers and they're in the both Ohio State and Michigan State right now are in the driver's seat. Pretty much whoever wins this game this Saturday is going to be in the Big Ten championship game, representing the East. So if Ohio State wins this game, then they're going to be in the Big Ten championship. So they still have their goals going on. And if they go to the Big Ten championship and win the Big Ten championship and go to a New York 6-day bowl, it's still a successful season. But to fans, and then you have people like Paul Feinbaum who, Urban Meyer's not, he's not worth the coach or whatever, the way he's been coming at Urban himself, which helps fuel these morons.
Well, let me just say this, but you got Paul Feinbaum, who in my opinion is a shill for the SEC. Mm-hmm. Of course he's going to take any shot at Urban Meyer, because guess what? Every school in the SEC not named Alabama would crawl on their belly to get Urban. And they know that Urban is built what I think is only second to Alabama as far as a program. And, you got to understand that's his job. Remember the Iraqi foreign minister, Shannon? I don't know how old you are, but the United States was in our beloved military. God bless our veterans and our warriors. But when they were whooping all over Iraq, here's the Iraqi foreign minister with troops inside Iraq saying, there is no one here. Go away. There's no one here.
Yep.
I mean, Paul Feinbaum is to the SEC what the Iraqi foreign minister was.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And it's just, that's what the way everything is now. You have the crazies out there and, Feinbaum said this and that and this and whatever. And it's just, it's completely insane. And the things that we should be getting up in arms about, we're not getting up in arms about, like the reports yesterday that came out about in 2009, Alabama players selling autographs for cash, but yet when Ohio State players sold their Big Ten championship memorabilia or bowl championship memorabilia or their gold pants from beating Michigan, they're considered thugs and everything. But now, since it's the SEC, nobody's really wanting to talk about it and just sweep it underneath the rug, and it's kind of BS. I
agree with you, and I think Ohio State, I think Gene Smith should be the first one clamoring, asking the the NCAA, where are you?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? You held us accountable. And here's the thing, though, that I get frustrated with fans. And I would say this to Buckeye fans, too. The NCAA is owned by the schools. So if you don't like what's going on in the NCAA, then the first person you have to blame is your school. And so if I'm a fan, I'm asking Gene Smith and the university, are you going after the NCAA? Because they work for you.
Right.
And the SEC or whomever, if they get away with stuff that others don't, it's because they're allowed to. It's just like this. I don't care what anyone says. North Carolina playing any athletic sport after what we know about that is absolutely proves to you everything you need to know about what's wrong with the NCAA. This FBI probe of college basketball, if that doesn't prove to you everything you need to know about how filthy college basketball is, and it needs to be cleaned up. But the NCAA wouldn't do it. So at the end of the day, I think outside of Washington, D.C., the most corrupt organization, in my opinion, is the NCAA, and it's owned by the schools. And that's where fans have to demand of their universities. What are you doing to hold the NCAA accountable?
I agree. I mean, last year, I remember we had a discussion about Rick Pitino over there in Louisville.
Yep.
And you made a point that about the NCAA bylaw that head coach is held responsible, and he never was, and he claimed his innocence or whatever. And then when everything started coming out about this Adidas stuff and all that, and now he took a polygraph test with 3 questions and he passed it, which is just a crock, and he still didn't know anything. It's just the way some of it is just, it's ridiculous. And I mean, if I was Gene Smith, I would be screaming on top. I would be getting on my soapbox screaming, look, if you're not going to do anything, give us our wins back. I
agree. Nope. Listen, I have no problem with it. And I agree with you 100%. I think fans should be disgusted about it. You know, when you look at Paul Feinbaum, listen, Paul Feinbaum works for the SEC network. He has a vested interest in doing anything, in my opinion, to help the SEC. And so when he takes his shots at Urban or he takes his shot at Harbaugh, that's fine. You just have to understand what he is. And, you know, it's like a 400-pound person calling Jabba the Hutt fat. Okay, but you're still fat. And I don't have any respect for Feinbaum. I don't respect the way he handles himself. I don't like the way he sits on his perch, you know, like he's a deity. But I'm sitting here tonight in my office with a good friend of mine who is a journalist from Georgia. And we were just literally at dinner having a conversation about Feinbaum when I mentioned him. I can't believe the way people down there treat him like a deity. And what I find fascinating is I have watched his show a grand total of 3 times because there were people who are friends of mine that were either going to be guests or going to be on. And all 3 times I couldn't believe people down there enjoy it because he makes fun of his own listeners. Mm-hmm. You know, let me say this. When I've come on your show, and again, I've been on for years, I have always told you how much respect I have for Ohio State, how much I think that place is a great place, how much I love your commitment to winning. I love your commitment to excellence. I think that should all be commended. But at the end of the day, even Alabama doesn't win them all. Now, I think every Ohio State fan has a right to say, every single year, we expect to compete for a Big Ten title. That is a fair expectation. I think every year that is an expectation at Ohio State. You said, well, I think you should expect to get to a bowl. First goal. I don't even think that's a goal at Ohio State. With your facilities, the way you recruit, the staff that you have, getting to a bowl, to me, it would be completely disappointing. But there's not going to happen every year. There are going to be times when guys have a bad game or somebody doesn't perform at a certain level. And just like I said to you last year when people were calling for Mark D'Antonio to be fired, who the hell were they going to replace him with? Exactly. Who is going to come in here without this track record that he has and prove himself? But I'm going to share something with you. And I've told you, Shannon, I've shared this on your show. I think it was 3 years ago, the first time I was on, about Mark D'Antonio talking about he remembers getting booed at the Horseshoe when they were winning and winning titles and winning and going to the BCS championship games and getting booed. Mm-hmm. And I just think that there's a sense of entitlement sometimes in Columbus that I think hurts the program. And you know what? I don't think you should be happy getting blown out at Iowa. I'm going to go a step farther. I don't think Ohio State or Michigan State should be happy about getting blown out to anyone. I'm going to make that real clear. But I also know you're not going to win them all, and you can be disappointed, but to turn on your team makes no sense to me. And again, I want to reiterate this because I get email every time I'm on your show. Shannon, you tell them if I'm lying. I'm not a hater, and I don't think it's the majority. No. But I do think it's people who are making noise and hurting you.
Yep. I definitely agree. And I mean, we talked last year, and I know one of the biggest things, you had fans on different boards and stuff like that. A lot of these Michigan fans come out after, having 2 10-win game seasons, and they claim the only reason that Michigan State was good was because Michigan was down. So now Michigan's good, so Michigan State's going to suck. Well, lo and behold, one bad year. I remember last year when we talked, the main issue was a lot of the players weren't bought into it, and a lot of them were thinking of themselves, and they were looking at, towards the NFL, and the name escapes me, but he was benched for the Ohio State game, and they played their butts off, and they came within a 2-point conversion of pulling off the upset. So, I mean,
yep. I'm going to tell you this. If I'm Ohio State, and you know this, last year on your show, I didn't give Michigan State any chance. 2 years ago, you didn't laugh at me, but you and Chip were a little bit surprised when I predicted a Michigan State win going in there. And you said to me, even without a quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think Michigan State could have picked a better scenario for this game. Now, they'll have to play their best game of the year. But I'm telling you, I think right now, this is a Michigan State team that flies under the radar. And there's one thing about this game that I don't think Ohio State people understand. The Ohio State, the Michigan State team is loaded. I think there's 22 kids from Ohio. We recruit Ohio big. Most of our 2018 class is from Ohio. There's great football played in that state, and Ohio State can't take them all. But those kids circle this game. This is the biggest one. Chris Fry told me in practice Tuesday, how he walked into the coaches at Ohio State and they said, well, we just don't think you're real good. And, if we have several kids above you decommit, we'll take you. Now, I don't think they were being rude. I think they were being honest to what they thought to Chris. But you don't think the 4 years that kid gets to play them, that game isn't circled on their radar?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Joe Bocci couldn't even get a look from Ohio State, and he's the best middle linebacker in the Big Ten. There are multiple players who will make plays Saturday night. Win or lose, they're going to make good plays. Now, L.J. Scott, you guys wanted him, you offered him, so you knew how good he was. But there are so many guys there, and it's just like kids who don't get offered from Michigan State and go to Minnesota or Wisconsin. When Michigan State plays them, they've got a chip on their shoulder. So I'm not acting like this only happens to Ohio State. But my point to you is this is such an emotional game for Michigan State. Mark D'Antonio is going home. It's Zanesville, where he's from, where his mama still lives. Jim Bowman. I mean, I've mentioned this several times on your show. I couldn't believe the people from Ohio State that went on my message board, F Jim Bowman, I can't believe you guys took him. Well, let me tell you something. We wouldn't have won a Rose Bowl. We wouldn't have had the success of all the top 10 finishes without Jim Bowman. He's a great coach. And you may not like him. You may have thought he was terrible at Ohio State. Thank you very much. We'll take him. And I just think sometimes the arrogance and the sense of entitlement is so overwhelming there. I think it just seeps into the program. And I want Ohio State to be good. I don't want Michigan to be good. I don't want that. I don't like Michigan. Now, I think there's a lot of good people there. I have friends that work there who I care about, who are good people. But I want Ohio State to be good. It's good for the Big Ten when Ohio State's good. But at the end of the day, I think Ohio State is at times their own worst enemy. I can't tell you how many times, it wasn't just the Jim Bowman thing. My brother is one of you. He's a Buckeye fan. He owns a large business in Ohio, actually owns a couple of large businesses in Ohio, season ticket holder, a donor, all of that. Where I have to hear about, we're going to crush you, this isn't going to matter, Sparty's season ends in Columbus, all this kind of stuff. And I understand fans talk smack, but there is a level of an arrogance and entitlement that I think overwhelms people. And quite frankly, I think it hurts because I think it gets into players. I mean, just like Ezekiel Elliott, I don't think Zeke's a bad kid, but you know what happened after Michigan State beat him there 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I think if you're a Buckeye fan, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. And you know what? But I think it's a sense of entitlement that seeps in through the entire program. It's we expect to be here. if there's one thing Nick Saban does really well, and I admire Nick for this. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I know Nick and think he's a great coach. But one thing Nick does is he does not allow his players, even though they have primo facilities and everything else, there's no sense of entitlement in Alabama. Now, I don't think they're saints, and I'm not saying that. I don't think any team with 115, 18 to 22-year-old kids in any conference is full of saints. But one thing that Nick does is you're not entitled to anything. You have to show up with a workmanlike approach to every week. And love him or hate him, you got to admit, Alabama seems to do that. And I think it's because he recognizes that sense of entitlement and does his very best to weed it out. Now, listen, I'm going to add this quickly, because I know I'm sure you're up against a break. Michigan State had that last year, too. And I said that on your show.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark D'Antonio said it last year, said I got a bunch of guys think they were born on third base. So I don't think it's just an Ohio State problem. But I think the good programs recognize it, get rid of it. It's like Tom Izzo in basketball. A few years ago, they did a major renovation of Breslin, which they just did again this year. And his players played badly, and he made them change out in the hallway. Wouldn't even let them have their multi-million-dollar locker room. Said, you don't deserve it. You haven't played like it. And I just think there's a sense of entitlement. And I would love to see Urban go back in the offseason and say, you know what, we got to look at this. I don't think your problem's coaching. I don't. I think you walked in. I think Iowa smacked you in the face. And I don't think you saw it coming. I think they were when I watched that game, I had someone ask me, do you think they quit on Urban? I said, I don't know if they quit. I think that's a little bit of strong language because I know lots of kids on that team, and I think they like Urban. But I think it was they got smashed in the face, and anybody that's ever been punched in the face knows your eyes kind of fill with water and it's hard to see. And they look dazed like, wait a minute, you can't do this to us. You're Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
We're Ohio State. And I just think that I don't think anybody quit. I'm just saying I think it was shocked and stunned, and then I don't think they knew what to do. All of a sudden it's over, and Iowa's running on them. And I think right now that, Ohio State is the big dog in the Big Ten. Let's not make any reservations. I'm not pretending that any other school is. But I think they're shocked. I think they're angry. I think they're frustrated. I think you have a lot of guys like Michigan State last year that were probably looking ahead to the NFL. And I think there's a lot to be concerned about in Columbus. Now, I totally believe in J.T. Barrett. I totally believe in Urban Meyer. But I really sincerely think, this is, if Michigan State has to play Ohio State this year, no better time than right now to do it.
I agree. Now, looking at everything, Brian Lewerke is coming in, and the last two games he's thrown for 400 yards. What has Michigan State done in order to allow him to have this success recently?
Well, it's just like 2013, where I mentioned earlier, they had a great defense, and halfway through the season, remember, in 2013, that was the year before the college football playoff, and it was pretty much a universal thought that if Michigan State had played Cassius Winston in the Florida State Seminoles, who won the national title that year, they would have beat them. And Michigan State won the Rose Bowl, defeated a highly ranked Stanford. I think that year they finished second. It may have been third, but it was third. They finished third because BCS always finishes 1 and 2. But Michigan State wasn't even ranked till week 10. Think about that one. Week 10, and they finished third. And one of the things you saw with Michigan State that year is about halfway through the year, Pat Narduzzi went to Mark D'Antonio, and he said, listen, Coach, we've got an elite championship defense. And you got to understand, we're not going to beat everybody on our schedule, 9-6 or 10-9. You're going to have to take your foot off the brakes a little bit and trust our defense. And they did it the first quarter of the Michigan game, and it worked. So then they went to Northwestern, where they knew Northwestern was good. They were going to score some points. So they needed to score more, and they took their foot off the brake. And Michigan State lost that game because Brian Lewerke wasn't ready. He hadn't been trusted to throw 45 times, 47 times. And he even admitted that to me this week. But then all of a sudden, they come into Penn State, where he had one game under his belt. Michigan State, and Ohio State fans may not like to hear this, top to bottom has what I believe is the best wide receiving core in America. a lot of great young stars. I mean, Hunter Rison turned down Alabama to be here. Cody White committed early. Felton Davis III, who is absolutely a stud, reminds a lot of NFL scouts of Larry Fitzgerald. I don't think anyone in America has a corner that can guard him in the red zone. Big kid, 6'5", wide receiver in the end zone. Great hands. And they have great wide receivers. And they're like, listen, we got good tight ends. We got great wide receivers. Let's trust Brian Lewerke to throw the football. And he's a lot like Connor Cook. He'll take some risks. He'll make some throws that you think, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, great throw. But at the end of the day, they're trusting him to make decisions. And when they make mistakes, that defense has bailed them out. Now I'm going to say this. They stopped Justin Jackson, the great Northwestern running back, and I think you would agree, Shannon, he's a great running back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They completely shut down Saquon Barkley. I mean, they shut him down. He couldn't do anything. And I think Ohio State has great running backs. I think they're very talented. I don't think Ohio State has a Saquon Barkley, and I think you would agree with that, but that doesn't mean there's not a lack of talent. Ohio State's not going to be able to run all over them. And this game's going to come down to a couple things. J.T. Barrett, I think, is a great quarterback, but he makes mistakes when he has to throw. When he's either forced by pressure or because of the scoreboard, he will make mistakes. Now, in fairness, just about everybody does. Look at New York. They want to get rid of Eli Manning, who's been an MVP and won 2 Super Bowls. And so I would say to you that this game is going to come down to, does Urban and Kevin Wilson come out saying, okay, listen, we know we're not going to run, so we got to throw the football and throw it a lot. If they do that, I think this is the best defensive backfield that they have played. But I think that's how they beat Michigan State. If they come out and they're stubborn and say, nope, we're going to keep trying to run, going to keep trying to run, going to keep trying to run, I think they're in trouble. And so what's going to be fascinating to me is Ohio State arrogant, or do they do what Michigan State did a couple weeks ago and say, listen, we have a chance at a special season. So we're playing with house money. Let's go do what we haven't done so we can experience what we haven't experienced, which is get back in the Big Ten race.
Now, the way I'm looking at this game, it's definitely the battle of the trenches type deal, old school Big Ten. Talk about Michigan State's offensive line. I mean, we look at the defensive line for Ohio State, and it's supposed to be one of the best in the country, but yet when it played Oklahoma and Iowa, they couldn't get to the quarterback and disrupt him and cause any kind of issues, which exposed their back seven. If they can't do that against Michigan State, there's going to be a serious problem on defense for Ohio State.
Well, if you go back and look, Michigan State's not giving up a lot of sacks. I don't think Ohio State can do that.
I think it was 12 so far this year, isn't it?
I'm sorry, sir?
I think they've given up 12 sacks so far this year.
Yeah, and they've done very, very well. Michigan State's very young, but Michigan State does a lot of things to get rid of the ball quick. They move Lewerke out of the pocket. He's a threat with his legs. He is unlike any Michigan State quarterback. That Michigan State hasn't had a quarterback like him since Drew Stanton. And listen, I do not think Brian Lewerke is as good as J.T. Barrett. So please hear me say that. I think J.T. Barrett is an elite quarterback, but he is a younger version of him. Who knows? He may, by the time all is said and done, be better, but he's not today, and he won't be Saturday. But he does go out there. He'll run, and I think he's going to try to. This game is going to be about Michigan State has to come out and go on the attack. I kind of disagree with you. I don't think Michigan State's going to run all over Ohio State. I think they'll be able to run okay, but I don't think they're going to be able to run all over Ohio State. I think they're going to have to come out and attack. And I agree with you. I think that Ohio State has a very talented back seven, but I don't think they're Alabama. And I think that this Michigan State needs to come out punching and go right at Ohio State, take the game to them. And let's find out quick the mindset of Ohio State. Is it, oh, crap, here we go again? Do the fans turn and boo? And, one of the things I talked about on my radio show today was if you're a Spartan fan, you need Michigan State to come out fast because those Buckeye fans will turn on them. And, Shannon, I'm right. They will. They'll boo.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll give them the business. And so turn that crowd against them as quick as you can. I don't think Ohio State will come out and have an absolute dogfight for 4 quarters. I just don't think they will. And it's not because I think they're quitters or untalented, because I think they're great. I just think that team is going to be like, oh no, and start to press and make mistakes. I think you saw it last week against Iowa. I think Iowa's good, but Michigan State beat them. But I think that Ohio State started to press. I think they felt the pressure. And when you start to feel pressure, you make mistakes. And so if I'm Michigan State, that's my goal this week. Get them in pressure. Make them start to feel the pressure. Let their crowd boo them a little bit. And I think if that happens, Michigan State's in a good spot. Because here's the whole deal. I'll say this to you. Michigan State is the Rocky Balboa. They're not the cleanest. They're not the biggest. They're not the strongest. They're not the best looking. But Michigan State is coming for a street fight. And they're going to battle for 60 minutes. The colder, the wetter, the muddier, the nastier, they love it. They love it. You should have seen it last week playing Penn State. They came out after almost a 4-hour break, and it was cold and raining and miserable. And Penn State's all cuddling up near the heaters, and Michigan State's dancing. It was a complete story of 2 different sidelines. And you knew it right then. This game's over. Michigan State is hungry. And I think Michigan State right now is absolutely hungry. I'm going to have a scouting report up at SpartanNation.com on Friday morning. It's going to be free, so all your listeners can go read it. And I'm going to be able to share some inside stuff from practice this week that I can't talk to you about right now, but I will talk to you on Friday on how they've mentally approached this game. The Spartans are jacked up. I'll be honest. In 11 years of Mark D'Antonio being at Michigan State, I've never seen the Spartans more jacked for an Ohio State game, including a Big Ten championship game, than the Michigan game. That's not the case this year. They're jacked through the roof. This is their Super Bowl. Listen, Michigan State ain't going to the playoffs even if they go win the Big Ten, and I don't think Ohio State is either. But Michigan State is praying, and not praying as in a biblical, but P-R-E-Y. They're praying. They're out there looking. They're hunting. And D'Antonio has sold them. You're not supposed to be here. Nobody thought you were. Let's send a message to the kids in Ohio that we're recruiting for 19 and 20. Leave your legacy on this program. Get another Big Ten championship and go into Ohio and beat Ohio State again. And I think it's just fascinating the way they've done it. I think this is going to be a great football game at one of the greatest venues for college football in America, Ohio Stadium. I can't wait to be there. I have so much respect for your fans. I have so much respect for your program. I think it's going to be a great matchup.
I will say that the most underrated coach in America is Mark D'Antonio. I do not understand how this man does not get the love and attention. And to me, he is, when you talk about the great coaches in college football right now, you have Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. And that's, and even Dabo Swinney, since he's won he's won a national championship. You've got to have D'Antonio right there. I don't care what anybody says.
Well, let me just say this. My coaches, I've got Nick Saban number 1, Urban Meyer 2, Dabo Swinney number 3, and I've got Mark D'Antonio at 4.
I agree.
Now, I'm going to be honest. Mark is a personal friend of mine. He's a great friend of mine. But I'm just telling you, I think he is a great coach, and I think that he absolutely is underrated, and that's okay. And you know what? At Michigan State, that guy is loved. Now, last year there were some people calling for his job. It was a minority group, but there were people calling for his job. But that guy right now, I mean, I never thought I would see anybody who could come close to Izzo, and he certainly has not overcome Izzo in East Lansing. But it's awful close, and he deserves it. I said to someone yesterday, if D'Antonio gets to 9 wins, and I think he'll get to 9 regular season wins, if he doesn't win Coach of the Year, then they shouldn't have the award. To go from 3-9 to 9-3. And if he beats Ohio State, I think he'll finish 10-2. And with a chance to go to a Big Ten title game, unbelievable. And I will tell you this, whoever wins the Big Ten East is going to beat Wisconsin. I predicted before the year they were going to be undefeated because they're not playing anybody.
Yeah.
But I think that's a team if you have to struggle to beat Illinois, that's like telling me you got a fistful of hundreds and can't find a date in the bad part of town, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, I mean, I look at D'Antonio, and especially with everything that happened during the off season with all of that stuff and people calling for his head, and, ESPN, they decided to, hey, we're going to sue Michigan State too, because apparently it's a Big Ten school, and, you guys are going to bow down to us, which they got taught another lesson. But the way he handled it, the way he never threw any of his players underneath the bus, he never let any of the information get out, any accusations or anything like that. He handled everything with class, and he made the Michigan State program look competent, and they took care of what they needed to take care of. So, I mean, to me,
I agree.
The man exudes class. So
Well, no argument. And remember, I said to you last year was his fault. After they won the Rose Bowl, they went out and recruited some kids that were not Joe Bocci type. We're not Chris Fry types. Guys that I know that they looked back on and said, you know what, we're not going to recruit them anymore. And they got a bunch of kids coming in 2018 from Ohio. Great kids, great players. Now, listen, Ohio State just can't take all the great players in Ohio, and that's a testimony to your incredible high school football program. But I tell you this, if I'm Urban Meyer, I'm going to look at some of the kids I take, and I'm going to ask myself, if this kid's already convinced he's a three-and-done player, and he's not thinking about the program, that would concern me. I remember when Michigan State got Le'Veon Bell. I'll tell you a great story about this, and I'm still close with Le'Veon to this day and was with him over the weekend. They wouldn't even give him the time of day. And when he signed on signing day, Donnie Treadwell, who you guys know well there in the state of Ohio, a good friend of mine, he was Michigan State offensive coordinator at the time. Donnie Treadwell took me off in the corner and said, that kid's going to be a three-and-done player. He goes, and he'll be the best running back in the country. I cannot believe we got him out of Ohio under Ohio State's eyes. Couldn't believe it. They were stunned. And Le'Veon would have crawled on his belly to Columbus. And, sometimes I think at Ohio State, folks fall in love with star rankings. And, I'm part of the Scout.com network. I'm proud to be part of it. I love Scout. But star rankings aren't everything. And Mark D'Antonio is famous for saying, I don't care about your star ranking. I want to know how big your heart is. And he tells his players all the time. He told his players this week, how many of you that are from in this room actually had an offer from Ohio State? He goes, if you didn't have an offer from Ohio State, stand up. And it was the majority of 115 kids. He goes, they didn't want you. They didn't think you fit. So you need to go send them a message. And he's played this so well. He's played it absolutely so well. He's not been at all disrespectful. He's informed them. I won a lot of games there. I love it there. Jim Bowman's grandkids are there in Columbus. They're going to be at the game. And there is nothing but respect. You don't see them mocking Ohio State or saying anything ill because Mark D'Antonio is very thankful for what that place has given him. It's almost like going in and saying, you know what, we love these guys, they're family, but we want to whoop them to remind them that we can whip them. And this game's personal to them. It matters to them. And I think sometimes Ohio State gets so fixated on other things and just the national championship, they look past sometimes the trees and they just see a forest. And I think that hurt them a little bit at Iowa. And I think there's a good chance it could hurt them Saturday if Michigan State comes in on the attack.
Do you have a prediction for this one, or?
You know what? Let me be honest with you. I don't make my predictions till Friday morning, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I get a lot of information from inside. I would tell you right now, I'm probably leaning towards a Michigan State win, but I don't know that. And Shannon, I would hope you would tell your listeners if I'm lying. I've come on your show and predicted Michigan State losses. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not being a homer in the least bit, but I predicted the win. Listen, I got mocked on national radio last week because I said Michigan State would win 28-24, and I laid out what I thought was going to be Michigan State's game plan. Almost word for word, they followed what I wrote, and they won 27-24. So I pride myself on not being a homer and just giving my best assessment. So right now, and I reserve the right to change my opinion come Friday morning, I'm leaning towards Michigan State winning this football game just because of what I'm seeing around the program, the way they prep for this program. I've gotten a little bit of insight on how they're going to attack Ohio State. I like the way they're going to come out. And again, they're playing with house money. And Ohio State's the one that everyone said was going to win the national title, including me. And nobody thinks Michigan State. I'm going to tell you this. If you think Vegas is right, that Ohio State's a 16-point favorite, you're on crack.
Well, they were obviously wrong last week when they put Ohio State up to 20 before the kickoff.
Correct. So I'm just telling you this. I hope that everybody on game day, and we know, of course, poor Desmond Howard, he doesn't know who to hate more this week, so he'll probably pick that neither team wins and it ends in a tie because he's a genius. But they hope everybody on game day picks Ohio State. They love the chip on their shoulder, and I think it's going to be a heavyweight fight. And I hope, and I beg Buckeye fans, keep selling those tickets because Spartans are buying them.
Well, I'm thankful that the College Football Playoff Committee put Michigan State at 12 because I know that years past, seeing Ohio State ranked higher or just a simple fact that the point spread, that Mark D'Antonio enjoys using the disrespect factor, so it kind of loses its luster when you see Michigan State 12 and Ohio State 13, thankfully.
Well, I can tell you this. Mark D'Antonio and his staff every day have reminded them of the point spread. And they've reminded them every day, remember, they didn't want you. And has reminded them that, this is about respect. And Mark D'Antonio constantly tells his players, he says it all the time in the media, we're not entitled to anything. We have to go get it. And I'm not trying to get into politics, but one thing I'm disgusted about in our country is this sense of entitlement, whether it's from millennials or older people. People act like everybody's entitled to everything. And one reason I think Mark D'Antonio has been so successful is because he has reminded his players from day one, you're not entitled to anything. You have to go work for, take and get everything you got. And part of that was, it was raised right there in the great city of Zanesville with that great Ohio work ethic and mentality, the one that my brother lives there and owns several businesses, and that's I know has made my brother a successful man. And my brother's born in the state of Michigan, but he tells everybody he got to Ohio as quick as he could. And I love the state of Ohio, and I love the people of Ohio. They're the backbone of America. When they make fun of cities like Detroit and Columbus, well, you know what? Cram it. Those are great cities. Or they make fun of cities like Cleveland. Those are great cities. That's a great state. I'm proud to be part of the Midwest and be part of, with states like Ohio. And sometimes I think that the Ohio State football program doesn't necessarily a mirror image of the people of Ohio with that sense of entitlement. And Michigan State lost that last year, and you saw what happened. And I think Michigan State got it back. And this is a football team that looks like people from the state of Michigan. All different colors, but hard workers, guys that are going to go out and put extra time in, guys that the coaches don't have to ask to go spend extra time 7-on-7, guys that don't have to be asked to go watch extra film. I heard yesterday that they kicked some kids out of the building. Said, you guys need to get away. Go relax. Go out to dinner. Go to bed early. Don't sit in here and watch film all night. This is their Super Bowl. And Mark D'Antonio has gotten them at a fever pitch, just like he does for Michigan. I think it's going to be a great football game. I can't hardly wait. I wish we could just head over to the shoe right now and tee it up, Shannon.
I definitely agree. And, I tweeted out yesterday, and the stat that scares the heck out of me, it's been, almost 10 years since the home team has won in this this rivalry. And I'm sorry, I don't care what any other fans want to say, but Michigan State and Ohio State has become a rivalry.
I'm going to tell you this right now. And you may totally disagree with me because I know history doesn't bear out what I'm going to say. But I think Michigan State, Ohio State is the greatest present-day rivalry. I mean, let me just say this. When Lloyd Carr was at Michigan, there was no rivalry with Michigan State because Michigan State didn't make it one. And I said that, and that pissed off every Michigan State fan. How dare you say that? You're a Spartan. But it was true. But let's be honest. D'Antonio has now won 9 of 11 or 8 of 11 against Michigan. It isn't, I mean, it's always going to be a rivalry with us in Michigan. But you guys own Michigan. You own them. And I think your biggest rival right now, although I don't mean this over time, and I'm not disrespecting the great history of Michigan and Ohio State, but I think as far as modern-day on-field rivalry, this is it. I think this is fun. I think these are two good programs, two superior coaches. And I think it's fun. And, you know, one thing I always love is I hear Michigan fans talk about when they go to the shoe, how mistreated they are. I have brought my family to so many games there. I think Ohio State fans are great to Michigan State fans. Now, I know there are a couple idiots, but I'm speaking in general, just like I'm sure there are some idiot Spartan fans when Buckeyes come to East Lansing. But I know so many Spartan fans that invite the Buckeyes to come to their tailgates. They wouldn't invite a Wolverine. They'd cut their private parts off before they do that. But, I mean, I think this is a fun rivalry. I think this is a rivalry of two brothers that genuinely care for each other. I do. I don't think that the Buckeye people hate. This is Mark D'Antonio. How do you hate a guy that was instrumental in winning a national championship for you? Yeah. How do you hate a guy that when you lose an L.J. Scott in recruiting, you know, you can not like it, but you know D'Antonio didn't cheat. That Zanesville, Ohio work ethic that his dad Justin raised him with, he wouldn't do it. That's just not how it's done. And it's the same way in basketball. You know, I love Thad Matta. I'm so sad that Thad's gone. I understand it's part of the game. But you know what? I love it when Ohio State and Michigan State play in hockey. I love it when they play in volleyball. I love it when they play in basketball. I've got nothing but respect for the Buckeyes.
You know, we'll have to do a basketball show here sometime soon and discuss a lot of that with the Thad Matta and everything like that. And, I mean, especially with everything that's been coming out lately as far as the FBI investigation and all the schools that are, you know, starting to, you know, get caught up into it. And you see schools like a Michigan State and Ohio State clean. They had nothing to do with any of this. So, I mean, when you have stand-up programs like that, that means a lot and shows a lot. That's, you know, character.
Well, you know what? I'm just, since you brought this up, I'm just going to say something. You know, Thad Matta is not only a great coach, he's an honorable man. Mm-hmm. And I would laugh sometimes when Buckeye fans would just rail on him and hate him because he lost some recruits. Well, would you have cheated? Because I'm going to tell you what, there were some recruits he lost because he wasn't a cheater.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think now, you know, especially with this FBI probe, I think there's a lot of Buckeye fans that need to ask themselves and be honest. You know, did we just run a guy out of town because, you know, if you're losing to people because they're cheating, you know, I'll give you a great story. If you're losing, I know a kid one time who was comes from a really religious family. And he wanted to go to Michigan State and play a sport. I'm not going to tell you what sport. And he was being recruited by a school, and the head coach said to his mother, he said, you realize you're not cheating the law because breaking NCAA rules is not legal. So God's not mad at you because you're not breaking the law. And he said to the mom, you know, we may be giving you a little bit of extra benefits, but do you understand it's just trying to help your family because we're about helping families. And the kid's mom had nothing. And the kid said to me, I'm not going to Michigan State. Michigan State won't match the offer. I really want to go there. But, you know, the coach made a good point. Everybody's making millions and billions and hundreds of millions of dollars off this, from the NCAA to the schools to the coaches, and we're not making anything, and we're not breaking the rules. And I watched that kid go to another school, and I watched Spartan fans get mad at the Spartan coach who lost them. But how do you get mad? Listen, I want to win every game, but if I have to win by cheating and I have to sell my soul, then you know what? I don't want to wear anything that says North Carolina. I don't want to wear anything that says Louisville. And there's other schools that I think are just as dirty in other sports. And so at the end of the day, I think Thad Matta was run out, but Thad Matta went up against some great schools. Sometimes he just lost great players to Michigan State and other schools. I don't think Tom Crean cheated at Indiana. And you know what? You can be disappointed with that. But I know a lot of kids that he invested in that he thought he was going to get and lost late because people were not ethical. And you want him to go recruit the best, but when other people step in at the end of the day and cheat at the last moment, that's not on Thad Matta. And I think Ohio State Buckeye fans, you know, that's going to come back and haunt them a little bit. I do believe it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I know I produce a show called Acosta Field with Tony Gerdeman, who's a beat writer for Ohio State. And when the whole FBI thing started coming out and we talked about, you know, Thad Matta definitely needs to be thanked for the way he carried himself and the way he, you know, took care of the Buckeye program, that Tony mentioned, you know, that he would come to Gene Smith and say, hey, look, this player, you know, they're asking for this. I'm going to have to pass on him. And Gene Smith was like, yep, we got to pass. So, I mean, I think that's what gets lost when players or when fans sit there and say, oh, you know, Thad Matta, he should have been fired at the end of the year. You know, Gene Smith knows all this stuff. So, you know, he's taking this stuff into account. And yeah, he was run out of town. And it's the sad reality of things for college basketball. And I think if all this, you know, with the FBI and everything came out beforehand, he might still be here. But at the same time, you know, it's sometimes change is needed, unfortunately. And he was having a hard time just being on the sidelines, I think, at times, just because of his back and everything.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. That was awful tough.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great person, you know, you have to have pride. And, you know, when you see programs like Ohio State have stuff like that, you know, people say Jim Tressel was a cheater. No, Jim Tressel was not a cheater. Jim Tressel made a mistake. He was thinking he was covering for his players and he screwed up and he made a mistake and he paid dearly for it. And if you don't think that man doesn't, you know, think about that every single day, there's something wrong with you. And he did not cheat. So I hate when people say that.
I'm Jim's friend and I'd go toe to toe with anyone that calls Jim Tressel a cheater. And Jim Tressel cares. Jim Tressel loves people. You watched a man that walked away from the university he loved rather than do anything to harm them.
Mm-hmm.
That's pure love. That's pure love. And I stand with you and I agree with you. Listen, Shannon, it's always great to be on with you.
Yes.
I love your show. I enjoy it. I look forward to it every year. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yes, I will talk to you later. And if you get a chance, stop by. There's a booth outside of North Rotunda where the bands and the players come in. Stop by and say hi. I work out there now.
Okay, buddy. We'll look for you. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks for coming on. All right. That's going to do it for this episode of Silver Bullets Podcast, episode 13, Thoughts from SpartanNation on the Ozone Radio Network. Don't forget, please listen to our other shows on the Ozone Radio Network, Sons of Schmidt and Acosta Field with Tony Gerdeman. You can you can subscribe to our show, iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, YouTube, Google Play. I've forgotten half of them, I think. If there's somewhere you guys want to have us at and we're not there, just let us know. You could follow us on Facebook at SLVR Bullets Pod. I mean, that's on Twitter. Like us on Facebook, Bullets Podcast. Also, we are subscribed to our YouTube page, Silver Bullets Podcast. I'm giving away a scarlet and a gray rally towel from the Penn State game. When we get to 100 subscribers, we're going to be able to have the actual custom URL of Silver Bullets Podcast. So that's why I'm trying to get us to that 100. We're going to be starting to do audio podcasts and stuff, or video podcasts and stuff like that on there. We're playing around with some stuff, so look for that coming out in here in the future. If you follow Hondo on Twitter, read his work at SpartanNation.com. I want to thank everybody for listening to the show, and go Bucks.